Welcome everybody. Welcome to the 21st tutorial in the top-down zombie game tutorial series. And before I get started, first of all, I want to shout out Music Life for his constant support to this channel and to my channel. And yes, so he also advised me to open a Discord server for the channel, and I did. And the whole point for this is so that I can be able to offer real-time assistance to anybody who has problem with their code, and also be able to share much content easier through Discord. So yes, so that's all, and let's get started. So you probably might have noticed that my background is a little bit, it's not white, it's a dark theme. Reason being, if you stare on white, on high contrast stuff, it's gonna hurt your eyes. So yeah, so to change your theme or your color and all that stuff, you can go to Tools, go to Options, and go to Fonts and Colors, and there you go. You can choose whatever, you can choose your profile or whatever. So this was the default profile. Was it this? I don't remember. Yes, Earth was the default. I think it was Earth. No, it's NetBeans. NetBeans is the default profile, so you can go ahead and change. No, wait, let me just show you. You can hit apply if I choose Earth or NetBeans. Let me just choose NetBeans and then hit apply, and you get this. There we go. So this is the default profile. I don't know why it's different anyway. So to change that, you're just gonna go to Tools. You're gonna go to Tools, Options. If you're using NetBeans, Tools, Options, and change your profile to City, Lights, or Norway. I prefer Norway, darker theme. And you can also change your font. You should be able to change your font. I just don't know how. You can also customize each color. For URL, you can change the colors for each, whatever you want. And I'm just gonna hit apply. I'm just fine with the default colors. There we go. And we can also go to the editor, and if you want to have autocomplete and all that stuff, you can go to code completion, and you can add this stuff, which kind of helps you to autocomplete. Like when you start typing, words come up and suggested words come up, and yes. So that's about it, and you're just gonna make your change or whatever, and then you're gonna hit apply once you're done. And yes, so let's get started. So today we're just going to be dealing with scenes and looking how they function. And again, we're going to be using inheritance for this concept. Now, for example, what is a scene? Now, I'll define a scene as it's just a setup of how, it's basically the environment you're working with. It's a setup of the environment you're working on, or you're on. So basically, for example, in a movie scene, you'd get, like, for example, the Avengers Infinity Wars. There's different scenes. There's a scene where Hulk gets beaten on by Thanos, and that was in space, so there's a different setup and a different environment there. There's also a scene where the Wakandans fight Thanos' forces of evil in Wakanda. So basically, you get the idea. So there's a different scene with different setups, and there's a transition between each scene and the other scene. So that's what we're going to be doing. So in our game, we're going to have a scene for the main menu. We might also have a scene for gameplay, a scene for a shop, and we cannot do all of this. We cannot write code for all that inside this same class. The game manager class is just going to be it's going to be like too crowded, and it's going to be hard to edit code in the future. So yeah, so that's it. That's about it. And so yeah, let me just go to my mini presentation and explain what we're going to be doing today. So we're going to create a parent class, which is going to be a scene, and with the parent class we're going to have subclasses, which can be a main menu scene, a shop scene, a level select scene, and a gameplay scene. As you can see, so when you do this, it will be much easier. We can just go back. So this will be when we write our code in such a way that follows a hierarchy, it will be much easier to do the coding and understand our coding if we decide to pause our project and then go back to it in like 2 weeks time, it will make it easier for us to understand what we're doing. And yeah, so this is what we're going to do. So for example, a scene, there's going to be a shop scene, a level select scene, a game play scene, and a main menu scene. But we're not going to do all of this inside this tutorial. We're just going to create a scene, a basic scene class, and our gameplay scene. That's all we're going to be doing today. So first thing we're going to do is we're going to go and create a new package, and I'll call it scene, scenes or scene, whatever. Misspelled the scene, and there we go. We're gonna hit finish, and inside the scene we're gonna create a new Java class, and I'll create a new scene class. Okay, a new scene class, and there we go. Now a scene is also, it's going to be kind of be like game object. I don't know how to explain this this now, because you can do a scene, you can make a scene not be a game object and it will still work, but I just prefer working like that. So we're just gonna say game object extends game object, and import implements all the abstract methods and all this stuff. I'm gonna comment out all this stuff. The reason why I'm making it extend the game objects, because a scene is also gonna have an update method. We're gonna update all the objects inside a scene. We're also gonna render all the objects inside a scene, because the scene is also going to hold our game object, our player. The scene will hold our player and our player and all this other cool stuff. We're gonna hold our player, our enemies, our zombies, our other objects. If we're gonna have cars, houses, all this stuff. So that's what is going to be in our scene. So now after this, the other thing that we're going to do is, since the scene is going to be holding our class, holding our game objects, we're going to create a list of game objects. List of game objects. So this list is basically going to, as I said, it's just going to hold our game objects. List game objects, and we're just going to name it game objects. Game objects. I'm going to explain what this thing means, and there we go. And inside the scene, we're going to create a constructor, and inside there I'm just simply going to call super. That's it. And I will say game object, sorry, let me remove the n. Oh, I didn't import, that's why I'm getting there. It's okay. Import java.util, so it has to be util.list, and rename this to game object with an s. And I'll say here game objects equals to new list of game objects. Okay, not new list, sorry, new array list. New array list of game objects. And I also need to import array list. In fact, let me just make this thing an array list. So I don't need java.util.list, and there we go. What's this? So there we go. I think this is good enough. So, and yeah. So now let me explain what an array list. So remember, like we in the key input, we created an array to hold the amount of keys, to set a maximum of keys of 256. And yes, it's basically a bunch of variables of the same type together. And yes, so what an array list is, it's basically it's a bunch of variables of the same type inside a list. The only difference between an array list and an array is that within a list, you have much more control, you get much more functions. And the other thing is that with a list, you can grow or shrink the size of your list dynamically. But with an array list, you have to specify the size of the array here when you create it. So you cannot, so if you specify the size of the array list to be 256, the array cannot the elements inside the array cannot be more than 256. But with an array list, you can have more than whatever. The elements inside the array will just grow on. Like, can have one element, like keep on adding until infinity, or until your computer crashes. So basically, and that's what an array list is. And yeah, and inside here, inside the init method, since we're creating a scene, I'll have, in fact, we need to make the scene class abstract, and inside the whatever, I'll create an abstract void method, abstract void public abstract. Let me just write down the code and I'll explain everything later. And inside the update, and I think this is about it, public in fact, we don't need to do this. Close scene. Let me switch the. Okay, and let me just change this stuff around. Sorry. So now let me explain all this code. So first things first. Why do I have a start method and an end method? In fact, let me change the stuff first. Remove the init method, and I'll create a start scene. Remove the abstract, and there we go. And inside here, I'll simply call in init, and inside the close scene, I'll just call in end, and there we go. So I'm probably wondering, why do I have all this stuff? Let me start explaining the start scene and the close scene with this end function and the init function. So basically, we're creating a parent class. As remember, as I said, we're going to be creating a parent class. So we're going to have some functions that need to be that the scene can do, but every single scene is going to have its own way of executing. For example, we're going to have a scene can start and can close. You can close the scene and you can start a new scene. So for example, if you want to start the main menu scene, we cannot write the same code to start a main menu scene as the same way we would start a shop scene. For example, if you wanted to have a different animation to open the main menu and a different animation for the gameplay to open the gameplay scene, we cannot be using the same code because there's going to be different stuff. So that's why we're going to use abstract functions or abstract methods, so that every single child of the scene class can have a start method, a start scene function, but necessarily doesn't do the same thing. It does different stuff, but it has the same purpose. I don't know if I'm making myself clear, but anyway, so yeah. Now the other thing that we need to do is inside the... Oh yes, now I need to explain why do we need a list of game objects. The reason that we needed a list of game objects is that because we're in a scene, right, and we're going to be using lots of objects, so we're going to need to grow and shrink our objects as the game progresses. Because if we're spawning zombies or spawning new players, we're growing. We need to add more stuff into the scene, so we're gonna use a list to add new stuff, new game objects into the scene. And when we're removing zombies or whatever, we're going to be removing stuff from the scene. So we're going to be removing some game objects from the scene. And the other thing is now how do you update these game objects? Now what we simply do is I'll simply go into the update function and I'll simply say for integer I, a simple for loop for int I equals to 0 while I is smaller than game objects dot size, game object dot size, I don't know, it's a function, right? Not capital, game objects dot size, and I simply say I plus plus, and what I do say here is I say game objects, let me just create braces, I'll simply say game objects dot get the index, and we're just going to call it the update function dot update. And we're going to do the same thing for the render method. Control C, and get I dot, instead of saying dot update, we're simply going to say dot render. And there we go. And for the init method, so we're gonna call the initializer for the scene, and also we're gonna simply say game objects. We're also gonna do the same thing, copy and paste. Instead of dot update, we're simply going to initialize game objects. And there we go. So now we're done with the scene, with the parent class, which is the scene class. And there we go, we're done. So basically we just created a system to add objects and remove objects to this into and out of the game. So now let me just go on and create a new scene, and I'll create a gameplay scene. I'll name it gameplay. It's going to have most of our gameplay stuff. Gameplay scene. I don't think I'm making sense anyways. And what we're going to say, we're just simply going to say extends scene. And here we're going to see why we have a start function. Now we're going to have, why do we have an end function and all this other stuff, basically. So yeah. So the few things that we have is, we have inherited is the init function and the end function. I just want to put the end function right at the end. Yeah, it makes sense to put an ending function at the end. And here we're just going to create a new constructor. We're going to create a game scene, a gameplay scene. Gameplay scene generate. And I'm going to call in the super function, super. And inside the gameplay scene, that's where we're going to put our player. So we're going to move our player from the game manager, and we're going to put our player inside the gameplay scene. So there we go. So first, so inside the initialize method, no, before we get there, we need to create the player object. So here we go. We can simply say private player private player, and inside the initialize method we initialize the player. We're going to simply say player equals to new player equals to new player, position, and I'm simply going to go to the game manager and copy all the stuff. Yes, import. And there we go. So and that's it, and we need to add it. So we need to say I forgot to add something. We need to add an add function, method to add, public void add object. I'm just going to take in a game object. And we're simply going to say game objects dot add game objects. There we go. Now if I go to the gameplay scene, I can simply say add player, add object, and there we go. So we added the player. In fact, I don't need all of this. I don't need to create a variable of the player anymore. I can simply just go here, draw X, something ain't right. Oh yeah, I need to remove this equal sign. New player, new vector. Okay, why isn't... Okay, there we go. So I can simply say add object, new player, and then everything's gonna work out. Just need to make sure the scene... There we go, we're gonna call the init. Okay, then, yeah, so everything is fine now. Before, we need to add a few more getters and setters. I can simply say get game objects and generate setter getter, and there we go. And now we can go test this. No, we can't test it out yet. We didn't create anything else in the gameplay scene, so I need to go to game manager and move all the stuff into the gameplay scene. So we're gonna move the buffered image, cut and paste it inside the gameplay scene, and okay, save and say okay, and we're gonna cut and cut everything inside the init method. Init. Move it to the gameplay scene. Let's get this multi-catch. Okay, whatever. I'm just gonna leave it like that. Okay, so we're gonna go to a game manager. So we cut that stuff. What else do you need to cut? What else do you need to move? Graphics to draw image. Yada yada yada. Cut. Go to the gameplay scene. Set the render method. Okay, I forgot to add another method. And we're gonna call this method. We're gonna add another abstract method. I forgot. Public abstract void. I'm gonna call it abstract void. I'm gonna call it draw scene. Graphics. 2D. Graphics. graphics. Graphics, there we go, and do this, and at the start of the render method we want to render the scene, so I'm going to simply call draw scene. Implement abstract method. If we go, and there we go. What else do we need to do? And I think that's about it. So we also need to remove all the player stuff, because we don't need the player inside this class anymore. So remove the player. Init, and there we go. So we're going to remove the player. Remove all of this. Remove all of this. And now we can simply say, okay, we can also remove all the stuff. Remove. And as you can see now, our class is a little bit smaller. We previously had like 250 lines of code, now we only have like 100. We have like 100, and now we can just go in and add our gameplay scene. So I can simply go up here and say private gameplay scene, gameplay scene. Inside init, I'm going to remove all of this as well. I'm simply going to say scene equals to new gameplay scene. And after that, inside the update method, I'm going to simply say scene.update. We're going to update the scene. Inside the render method, we're going to render the scene. I'm simply going to call scene.render. And let me just go inside here. And inside the game manager, I need to also start the scene. I need to go inside here. After this, we can simply say start scene. Scene.start scene. Yeah. Scene.start scene. And now when we run it, there we go. Everything is done. Everything's still perfect. Now I want to explain a few things here before we can move on. You're probably wondering, okay, dude, we just created a player. Set the gameplay scene. We created a player, and we assigned the player to what is it called, as a game object. How is that possible? Remember, with inheritance, let me just go back. I think I don't have the previous paint file. So yeah, so with inheritance, even if we created one class, a level select class, and this is a different class, but as long as level select extends or inherits from scene class, level select is an object of two things. It's basically a level select, and it's also a scene. So it's the same with the player. So if I go down to the player, where's the player inside the gameplay scene? There we go. Add object, new player, all this stuff. So basically, we added a new player to the list of game objects. But if you go to the player class, where's the player? Or is that in entities? Yeah. If you go to the player class and look at it, we can see that player extends from entity, and entity extends from game object. Therefore, a player is a game object. So player is a game object. There we go. And by the way, so the other thing I wanted to add to the game object class is just one small thing I forgot to mention or add, is we're gonna need a name variable for the player. For each game object, it's gonna need a name. It's gonna help us a lot, by the way. So protected string name, and there we go. And we're just gonna default this to empty. And here we're just gonna create a function called getName, and there we go. So we're gonna have get name, and that's about it. So that's all we need to add inside our game object class. And yes, so guys, this is it. So this is your introduction to scenes and how they work. Basically, we haven't done anything yet, so it's basically a repetition of what we did. We just moved a lot of stuff around, and that's about it. And yeah, so in the next video we're gonna create a scene manager, and I'm gonna show you like how it works, how everything works. So we're gonna create a scene manager to manage in between scenes. So we're gonna create what scene did I say we're gonna have with we're gonna create a different scene, but not a main menu. We're gonna create a start game scene. Like, you know those press any button to start play or something like that. Yeah, so we're gonna create something like that. So guys, yes, and peace. If you like the video, please subscribe, and yeah, so peace. And guys, so if you want to stay updated and notified whenever I upload new content, you might just as well go to my channel and subscribe and hit the little bell icon, notification icon, so that you get all, and you select it to all, so that you get all so that you get notified whenever I upload any new content and new tutorial videos. So yeah guys,